A 1, 2, 3. Private parts. Fee McRae. And all her friends talking about the things that doctors rarely say.
Welcome to Private Parts. I'm here with our videographer, Gina. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So Gina is one of my best friends in the whole world and one of my biggest support networks. I don't know how we've got through the last 3 years without you, so I feel very lucky to have you here working with us every day.
Oh, this is gonna be.
We're gonna get through it. It's fine.
We're gonna be fine, aren't we? This is gonna be fine.
We'll talk about something practical. So can you tell us what you suffer from?
Yes. So I suffer from migraines, which is like a classic. It's a classic illness. I'm sure there's many people out there that are like me too. So can relate to lying in dark rooms, being annoyed by any kind of sound, and just like trying to sleep off bad head pain. So yeah, I've had migraines for about 5 years now, I think. So a lot of people have migraines from birth or have a sort of genetic disposition to it, but it happened later for me, which is pretty bizarre.
And so do you have structure to your migraines? Do you have an awareness of when they're going to come on, or is it just sporadic and you have no idea?
Oh yeah, mine are like, it's like clockwork. It's like I've got my diary laid out. I could tell you in like a year's time when the next one's going to come because they're hormonal, so they come I've got a 26-day cycle. They come every 13 days, the same time, without fail. So in some regard, that's quite lucky for me to be able to plan my life around pain and when things are going to happen. So someone says to me, hey, I'm doing a shoot, can you do this day? I can actually look into my diary and be like, no, I can't, I'm going to be in bed that day. So there is some kind of relief to having a bit of a structure, at least, to be able to know what's going to happen.
So for people who don't understand how these kind of migraines work, does it happen for an hour and that's your migraine, or is it a long process, a few days, a few hours? What's a normal, you said day 16. What happens from day 16 and how long does that generally last?
Yeah, so hormonal migraines is what I have specifically, which lots and lots of women and people who have hormonal cycles suffer from. They can last anywhere. They often last a lot longer than strong migraine attacks. And they have a very long onset process, or that's what it's been like for me anyway. So they started off being about 3 days. So you have about half a day of the aura and feeling a bit funny, like not necessarily having headache traits, but having sensitivity to light, smell, and those kinds of early onset things, or I get neck and shoulder pain, which is quite common as well. And then you enter the second phase, which is the sort of the head pain phase. And so that can last anywhere between 1 and 2 days at the start, but then as the years went on, it kind of got worse and worse, I think, with certain other symptoms and factors that were playing in. So I ended up having about 5 days or 6 days of head pain days, and then coming out of it in sort of a post-dome phase, they call it, where you have rebound headaches, the irony of that, which is like confusing because you're like, I've had headaches this whole time, and now they're like, oh, and here's another headache for having a headache. So I guess essentially to anyone who hasn't had a migraine before, they come in so many different shapes and sizes. Everyone has different kinds, but the big overlying thing is that it's sort of like an overwhelming senses experience. So your body just can't deal with really simple things like light, sound, things that wouldn't normally affect you. So there's this sort of oversensitivity thing that happens that causes people to be sick. And so that often happens in that sort of mid phase, and then afterwards you come out and you're just exhausted because your body's just seeing light is so intense and exhausting. So then the post-dome might look like a few days of sleeping really long hours and trying to recover from what's happened in your body.
So that could potentially take up, 10 days of your month is building up to living through and then recovering.
Yeah.
So that's like
yeah.
1/3 of your life at this point.
Yeah, and so it kind of got to a point where I was getting them once a month, 3 days, so 3 days of the month I'd be out. And at this point I was working part-time, or I was working like maybe 4 days a week somewhere and studying. And then when I kind of, as the years rolled on and I started actually cottoning onto a bit of a pattern that was happening, it started happening twice a month, 3 days, and then twice a month, 4 days, 5 days, up until the point where twice a month I was having 8 days, probably between 6 and 8 days of bedtime, which is a long time. That's half your month is in bed. It has a pretty intense toll on your life in a number of ways, especially for work.
Yeah, that's massive. That's
I'm like,
when you say it out loud, you go like,
"Oh,
oh
that's
wow,
a long time."
that's a mission. So speaking of work, you now run your own business with your business partner Fagan.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people that might be watching these kind of things are dealing with either going through diagnosis or living with chronic illnesses, and the big thing is working out work. Like I know for me, like I just don't work. It's impossible to find a job that works around the fact that I don't get out of bed most days. So how did you work that out? Obviously in the beginning you were probably like, this won't last forever, I'll just work through it. But how did you find a healthy way to run your own business, get things done, but also allow time for these huge chunks of haze?
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, it's not easy, and it's not very pretty. Like it's not like, running your own business is pretty intense, and you have to do everything yourself, and you have to be so on top of it, and you have a few people that you work for, and you have to be there for them at all times. Otherwise, they'll just go somewhere else to work. And because I work in the creative field, like there's 1,000 other people that do what I do. It's not, it's a very bizarre industry in that way where you don't, where you kind of, I always felt anxious that I wasn't doing enough for people, or I felt like I was going off the radar. Every time I was sick, I'd try and, obviously still contact people, but it just contributed to stress. So I guess the first few years, because I've had the sort of timeline of migraines progressively getting worse, the first few years were really tricky because I didn't really know what was going on, and I was at workplaces, physically attending workplaces and having to be there for allotted periods of time. So I would just sit there and I'd be like, oh, that's weird, like my screen's really bright and I have a really bad headache, and I didn't even know that I was having migraines at the time. I was just like, wow, I guess that's what happens when you work in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. Like you just get a sore head. This must, I should probably go for a walk after work and try and sort that out. And it wasn't until I worked at a workplace where one of my colleagues and close friends there, she got migraines and she explained what they were to me. And I was like, oh, that's what a migraine is. That's what you're having. And this is like a year and a half into experiencing these head pains. So I think then, like, thinking about how do I work with that, by the time I'd quit I was working part-time at a wonderful company, and they were so understanding of migraines and everything, and my boss's wife suffered from migraines, so he knew what was going on. By the time I left, that was when it started getting a lot worse. So I went full-time Pop Candy about maybe 3 years ago, and I was like, yes, working for myself. And then as my migraines got worse and worse, it just became harder to maintain that kind of income, for starters, like trying to get money in every month and trying to meet deadlines and stuff. And so then what happens is your life becomes so skewed. You get to this point where you're like working the weekends that you're not sick. And I'd get out of a migraine and my head would be better and I'd be straight onto the computer trying to do things. And my business partner has really been the ultimate saviour. Oh God, this is gonna get me. God, I knew this was gonna happen. He's really been the ultimate like saviour in all of that, because I would go down, he had a calendar of everything, and he would call me and he'd be like, okay, let's look at your schedule, and he would contact all of the clients, he would do whatever needed to be done, and he would work in obscene hours to try and navigate this kind of situation. So I'm just so lucky to have had someone, like, I can't even imagine having a business yourself and dealing with it. Like the way that Pop Candy has been laid out has made it a lot easier for me to be able to carry on and still work and have a quality of living where I can still earn enough money to get by with migraines. Yeah, and so it's really, you have to be so organised, and you have to be so prepared to have those, to sort out those times that when you are down, you need someone there to help you. And I guess this is the problem with migraines, is I just know how hard it is. You know, not everyone gets to have someone who's just at the drop of a hat will stay up all night and do your work for you. Like, that's insane. But in saying that, it's just, that's what's really gotten me through being able to work and being able to still professionally develop things that I'm, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Thank you, Fagan.
Yes.
The end. I don't know where
Fagan.
this tangent's going, so I'm just going to cut it off.
Yeah,
You tell me.
no, thank you. Obviously you are very lucky, and it would be amazing if all workplaces could have an understanding, I guess, of what these conditions can look like. And I guess a big thing that we can talk about at some point is communication with bosses and how to explain. And I've had, when I was getting diagnosed, one of my bosses really didn't believe the situation I was in, and was, so how do we communicate to employers that this stuff is legit, and we're not hormonal women or people with, these like period problems. But Fagan's just been so incredible, and as a friend and as a business partner, and I'm so glad that you've had him in this process.
Yeah, and like from a work perspective and friendship perspective, because we're also in a band together.
Yeah.
So from all of those perspectives, he's able to, talk to cancel gigs if we've needed to cancel shows, or has been really understanding about the situation as a whole, and has, there was a time when the migraines were probably at their worst about 2 years ago. I just remember he would come over, and next thing I'd know, he's got some weird eye mask. You've tried on the eye mask, haven't you? And it like massages your head, and he would just spend so much time researching as well, which was insane to have someone be like, hey, I've heard that this thing can be really helpful. And I'm just like, that is, so I've been so lucky to have that support network around to manage all of this.
For sure. Well, I want to check back in with you in a couple of months, of course, but I just wanted to say, on behalf of everyone who's going to take in this content, thank you. Thank you for
Get it together.
No, but thank you for giving us your energy into this project and working so hard on it. And without the help of you and so many of our friends, we wouldn't be able to get this content out, and it's so important. So thank you for sharing with us and for doing this project and for helping me so much.
Of course. Oh my God. Well, of course. Like, this project is everything, and I just love what you're doing here, and just see you sitting here in bed, just conquering the world, and it's like, it's so bizarre to do this on camera, but like, but
yeah, how many hours have we spent in this bed?
In this bed, crying.
Yeah. Oh, but thank you. That was perfect.